and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And in the news this week, Indiana has passed the worst license to discriminate bill in the country. Which is saying something. And some businesses are threatening to leave the state.
Or not hold their conventions there. We'll bring you up to date on that. And we are tracking 80 anti-LGBT bills in 26 states. I thought it was 28 states, according to HRC. We'll give you a progress report, but not on each one.
No. You can go to the HRC site for that, I guess.
Yeah.
In Boise, Idaho, a 13-year-old transgender girl is told that she must use the boys' restroom.
But she is fighting back, and we'll show you that. In Oklahoma, they are having a fight over a license plate for a guy who is an LGBT ally and wanted to put that on his car.
You can't say LGBT on the air. It's sexual, according to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
There was a breakthrough in federal court for transgender people under the Affordable Care Act.
Russia has been thwarted at the United Nations in their attempt to stop spousal benefits for same-sex spouses of UN staff.
And the winner of GMHC's first Larry Kramer Award was Larry Kramer. And we're going to bring you his address to the multitudes.
And as many of you may know by now, some of you weeping, some of you celebrating, HBO has canceled Looking.
And we will remind you that we are back in our new regular schedule for our free speech viewers, and that means that we come to you on starting on Fridays. These are Eastern times. Fridays at 4 p.m., Saturdays at 4 a.m., 9 a.m., and 11 p.m., and Sundays at 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. All of this is in our email that we send out every week. If you'd like to be on our email list, write to me, andyhum@aol.com, and we'll give you a program preview each week and tell you what's coming up. But you can always watch the show at our website, www.gayusatv.org.
And now the news.
Yes. Well, we do start in Indiana, where the legislature has voted to make all laws optional. Everyone in Indiana will be a law unto themselves. You just have to cite, I have a religious objection to following. Now, this is very extreme.
God told me to kill you, and therefore that's what I'm doing.
Well, didn't they make some exception for criminal law?
I don't know. They did say that, and we're waiting to see whether the governor signs this bill. He has announced his support of the bill, but there's a lot of pressure being exerted on him not to. We'll get to that in a second.
But, well, if there's any chance that the governor is not going to, hasn't signed it yet, or you could yell at him now if he has signed it, but his name is Mike Pence. We have his number there, 317-232-4567. Call him and give him a piece of your mind.
And tell him you're not going to support him for president because he wants to be president, too.
Well, I mean, businesses have come out around this. The Ashkenazi Health Group said it would undermine our patients' trust in every one of our 4,000 employees who work there. And Eli Lilly said, hey, we're trying to cure cancer here, and you're depriving us of the best minds in the country. Because when people see laws like this, they say, Indiana, they're kind of nuts there. Look at that law they passed. They passed it 63-31 in the House. Even if Mike Pence were to veto this, he could be overridden.
Very easily. The Republican mayor of Indianapolis has announced his opposition to this bill. The largest convention annually that comes to Indianapolis is the Gen Con Gaming Convention. 56,000 attendees, $50 million to the city. They are threatening to stop coming to Indianapolis if the governor signs this bill.
After 2020, because that's how long their contract goes.
Well, sooner than that, the Christian Church, which is the Disciples of Christ, are saying they will cancel their 2017 convention in Indiana if the governor signs this bill.
This is all very dispiriting, and I hope one of the things that people in Indiana will do is like what they did in Mississippi, where they have a similar law. You put up signs in your local business that says LGBT people welcome here. Or I forget the exact formulation in Mississippi, but it's all about, you know, it would create an atmosphere of welcoming from businesses for us and show up those bigots.
I also like the proposals that have been brought up in a couple of other states to make businesses that want to discriminate put up signs saying LGBT not welcome here. Yes. And see how far they get with that. Now, this is a law that does allow people to assert a religious reason for not following any law, for discriminating, for not serving people, for whatever, not renting homes, not employing people, just wiping it all out. But they do say that in this law that it can be trumped by the state proving a compelling interest in not letting that happen, but they also have to have a very narrowly tailored reason for it, whatever that may mean.
Well, they don't have a statewide LGBT rights law in Indiana, but many of the cities do. And would it override the provisions of the Indianapolis gay rights law, for instance?
I am sure that we will be involved in litigation for many years to try to figure that out and to define these things, because you would think on the face of it these things are illegal, but on the other hand you would have to acknowledge that there are 28 states in this country that don't have protections of any sort for LGBT or T people against discrimination, and these laws become unnecessary in over half the country because there are no protections to begin with.
Which is why it's good to review again what our options are nationally. We're highly unlikely to get a comprehensive LGBT rights law out of this Congress, probably not until after 2020. But,
but we can't give up on that.
No, you fight for it.
Yeah.
But there's also...
And we have passed non-discrimination bills in Republican legislatures around the country, including in New York State. So...
I agreed, and there are Republican sponsors of these bills, but the part...
And when President Ted Cruz gets behind this... I'm sure it'll pass easily.
But the other option, of course, is getting better court rulings, or continuing to get good court rulings that say anti-gay discrimination, anti-trans discrimination is sex discrimination under Title VII. There's a big trend towards this. It's an effort, and it's a judicial way of achieving it.
Meanwhile, in Michigan, the House there has passed 3 bills that, for instance, give adoption agencies the religious freedom or religious exemption to make their own rules about who they are allowing to adopt or take care of foster children, and those can be based not on the best interests of the child, but on the bigotry of the agency.
Speaking of bigots in Michigan, State Representative Gary Glenn, who's also the state president of the American Family Association, alerted his Twitter followers that the new editor of the Midland Daily News, where he is gay. Maybe we should warn everybody about who the heterosexual editors in the country are.
Now we just have to warn people about Gary Glenn.
Yes.
In Michigan, they have introduced a whole new raft of religious...
You mean Missouri?
I said Michigan.
Yeah.
I meant Missouri. Thank you very much.
That's all right.
But yes, there is a whole new basket full of religious exemption bills proposed there.
One would ban toilets not labeled male or female, unless it was single serve.
One would think that would be, obvious, but whatever.
A lot of stuff about bathrooms.
We won a bill, though, or maybe only temporarily. We'll see in Kentucky, where the big anti-transgender bathroom bill has disappeared at the end of the legislative session there. And in fact, HRC reports, and you can go to their website for this, 28 states having more than 80 bills in play on what they call state state hate bills. Only 2 in Arkansas and the one in Indiana have passed in this year's sessions. 34 have actually failed. 50 remain undecided, and of course there will be more coming along as we will report.
Because Arkansas, for instance, advanced a bill that you can sue government actors if you believe they have violated your religious beliefs.
It's just endless. This is the future, the present, and the immediate future.
Let's see where else. In Kansas, the Senate approved 30-8 a bill that lets religious groups on in public colleges limit membership to like-minded believers. I mean, religious freedom is under assault in this country, and this is what this is what they're feeling.
The problem is that these, whether it is campus groups or adoption agencies or public accommodation businesses or whatever, they have all been ruled in court actions ineligible to discriminate because they receive government funding or support or certification. At a public university, if you're running a campus group and you get funding from the public university, you shouldn't be discriminating. And these groups want the ability to discriminate even though they're at a public university or they're a publicly funded adoption agency or have some kind of state certification. And the fight here is between, do we live in a country that doesn't discriminate in the actions of the public government, or are you allowed to trump all that with your private, individual, bigoted feelings?
Well, I will just remind the right-winger religious people who monitor our show that separation of church and state has been the salvation of this country, to use a religious term. It has allowed religion to thrive, and if you do this, you're ultimately going to destroy your own house.
Well, I think all of these laws invoke unintended consequences. And when you start destroying the rule of law with individual exemptions based on personal opinions, that can come back to bite anybody. Well, the whole point of having laws and a nation of laws, not of men, is to set standards for everybody. And when you start monkeying around with that, you're opening a very dangerous Pandora's box.
As in Oklahoma on the marriage issue, where they now, basically clerks can't marry people anymore.
Well, is that for sure?
Well, that's where it's headed. And so as a result of that, a lot of gay folks are registering to be ministers. It still makes it harder for atheists to get married in the state if they go through with all this.
Well, you don't have to pass a test to prove that you have some religious feeling. Anybody can go online and get ordained.
But if someone says, I want to get married, and I'm an atheist, there's a harder road to hoe in terms of going through the process.
I suspect if someone wanted to get married, even if they were an atheist, and the state was telling them, we're getting out of the business of doing civil marriage, and the only way you can do it is if clergy or judges marry you, and your friend gets ordained online, you might go along with that. They don't have to perform a religious ceremony, per se.
Your existing clergy are expressing upset at the new burden of the role on them in terms of taking up all their time.
The new burden, their new burden, they're the ones who wanted to have the legal right to perform marriages all these years. They got themselves special rights in the system.
Yep.
We didn't have to have clergy eligible to be the state representative in performing marriages. We could have kept this separate all along.
I mean, in most of Europe, the only thing that the state recognizes is your state licensed marriage. I mean, even when Princess Grace married Prince Rainier in Monaco, they had this civil ceremony that they had to go through in order to be married, and then they had a church ceremony which was indifferent to the state of Monaco. Or the principality, or whatever the hell it is.
All right, back to some political news around the country. Reverend James Meeks was confirmed in Illinois as the chair of the State Board of Education. There's religion moving right into the State House.
So LGBT leaders met with the new Republican Governor Rauner, who appointed James Meeks, and he pledged enforcement of anti-discrimination laws. Duh, he's the governor, that's his job. But he also said he will support their #1 bill, which is banning so-called conversion therapy for young people.
Rauner said that, or
Yes,
Meeks?
Rauner.
Okay.
Well, not Meeks. Meeks says that we're evil.
Yeah. Did we care about Ted Cruz nominating himself for president?
Well, in a bad atmosphere, anybody could become president.
Or vice president.
I don't think that someone. He's such a loose cannon, but you know.
No one seems to be taking him seriously on the Republican side.
There was another Texan who wasn't too nice, George Bush, who got elected there.
And no one took him seriously at first either.
Except Karl Rove.
Yeah.
So I take everybody seriously, because if the country's going through a certain kind of a thing and they just want something different, they vote for the other person.
And whether he's electable or not, he can certainly set the tone of the conversation in all sorts of places.
But then there was Jeb Bush. He's down in Georgia. He's in Atlanta, and he was asked about the religious liberty bill there, where you can refuse service. And he said, you know, refusing gay service, he says people have a right to do that, just as we need to be respectful for people who are in long-term committed relationships, which is a non sequitur. What the hell are you talking about? You don't support same-sex marriage, and then you come out with a statement like that. I posted this on Facebook, just his statement, and it got more attention than a lot of other things, because they're you know, they're boxing themselves into a corner, some of these candidates, by taking these extreme positions.
But the point is that no one holds them accountable, and they can contradict themselves all over the place, and no one is paying attention. People vote on their feelings. They don't vote so much on people making contradictory statements.
I think it got Romney in trouble the last time, because he went through all those debates with all the Republicans, and he took a lot of more extreme positions, and it made it harder for him to dig his way out. I
think what got him in trouble was that secret taping by the gay waiter. The gay waiter. And people found he wasn't a nice guy, and they didn't like him.
We are everywhere, so watch out. We ask and we tell.
Yeah. And we've told on the Archbishop of San Francisco, Corteleone. We've talked about him a lot on this show. And
he's a very bad guy, very anti-gay.
He is now waterboarding the homeless.
So to keep the homeless off the lawn at St. Mary's Cathedral, they turn on the watering system on them. I mean, good.
They have, this isn't the lawn. This is the steps of the cathedral. They have overhead sprinklers in the cathedral that flood them.
It's like, it's not quite Quasimodo pouring that molten metal down on the in Notre Dame, but it's sick.
Yeah.
Anyway.
On the other hand, in San Francisco, a gay cop has resigned from the police force because he is one of 4 cops found to be trading racist and homophobic texts between each other on the job.
By the way, in the U.S. Senate, James Inhofe of Oklahoma introduced a bill to let businesses use tax funds to discriminate versus same-sex married couples. That's nice.
Yeah, he's a great guy, always has been. In Massachusetts, the organizers of the Boston St. Patrick's Parade say, we were duped. We let Boston Pride into the St. Patrick's Day Parade because we thought they were like Boston Strong, the organization that came out of the horrible Boston Marathon bombing and murders a couple of years ago.
Beyond that, they criticized the group for using rainbow umbrellas during the parade, not just because they were rainbows, but because they were umbrellas. You're not apparently supposed to carry an umbrella in the parade.
I don't know. These St. Patrick's Day parades, maybe we should just let them die a quiet death instead of...
Ignore them?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe.
In California, as you know, there is the proposal by the nutcase lawyer to put a referendum on the ballot to shoot dead all gay people.
It's called the Sodomite Suppression Act. That's the title of it. But of course, the Attorney General of the state has to come up with an actual title for it and write a description of it.
Yes, although there's some talk that she could, in effect, engage in civil disobedience by not doing that. But the current talk is that she has to go to court to try to get it declared unconstitutional.
Or she could not do it and get sued.
Yeah.
you know.
Yes, and set up a thing where he has to sue her to get it, and then it would end up in court, and there would be a discussion of its potential
Well, this guy,
constitutionality.
Matthew McLaughlin, who was pushing it, he needs to get 365,000 valid signatures, which means he probably needs double that, and is unlikely to get it, but you never know.
Look,
it's a horrible process, and there is a big movement to disbar him because he is a lawyer.
You know, we have taken note of petition signers for bad referenda. And the idea that anyone would sign this referendum petition is just so astonishingly horrible. And I think we would absolutely be paying attention to who signs those petitions.
And they have shown that, again, I don't think he can do this. I mean, I don't think he physically can do it.
Hard to imagine they'll let it get that far.
Most of these petitions are paid for by billionaires who want to change policy in the state, and they just hire people to do it. But what they find is a lot of people sign without looking at what it is, and some people actually say, I'll sign anything. I think everything should be voted on the ballot. And they don't even read it.
Well, you have some of that attitude in political candidates.
I think people should be able to get on the ballot, yes. But I think I would draw lines on certain things.
I'm happy to hear that.
Usually the first person who comes to me, I will say, yes, I will help you qualify for the ballot. If you're not a Nazi or something like that.
I draw distinctions before that, but
Okay.
whatever.
Well, you would wait for your candidate.
I just hope that this is somehow disallowed before it gets to petition signings, because I don't want people out there signing a kill the gays ballot referendum petition.
We certainly will probably put a Know Thy Neighbor posting online if you do sign it. So you're forewarned, because I know you watch this show.
Now, on the other hand, in Texas, the Attorney General there has sued the U.S. Department of Labor. He does not want same-sex couples included in the Family and Medical Leave Act, as the government has just announced should happen. Now, in Texas, this would mean people who were married out of state and are now living in Texas, and who are legally married in the states where they were married, but Texas does not recognize their marriage, and therefore Texas does not want to give them access to family and medical leave as defined by the federal government. The Texas Attorney General is arguing that he wants to preserve state sovereignty by not allowing this.
What is he worried about? After all, they are advancing a bill in Texas. It's being heard. It's advancing in committee to deny all state funds to anything to do with same-sex marriages.
Exactly. Even if the Supreme Court legalizes same-sex marriage, they would forbid any government support of licensing, registering, certifying, or supporting same-sex marriage. I don't think they're going to get away with that. I think all these moves are political. These are people who run for office. They're trying to appease a constituency. And in a place like Texas, what seems to happen is that mostly very conservative people get elected to office, especially statewide.
We keep hearing about demographic trends in Texas that will change that in the near future.
And there are openly gay people in the legislature there, so locally certainly that is not always true. But statewide, he is playing to a right-wing constituency that will approve his every attempted move against LGBT people.
Well, they did have a big rally.
Whether he can get away with it or not.
They did have a big rally for biblical marriage in Austin, and it was led by Roy Moore, the Chief Justice of Alabama. There were some counter-protesters there.
Yeah. Let's move on to some, one of my, I will say, favorite, because I like this girl, a 13-year-old girl in Idaho, a trans teen, is out at her school as trans, and one parent of another child withdrew the other child from the school so that she would not have to be subjected to this trans teen going into the bathroom in this school in Boise. So news reports are now covering this. This girl has the support of her father. They're a wonderful family portrait there, and we wanted to show you this local report of this girl in Boise, Idaho.
The transgender student at the center of a bathroom controversy is telling her side of the story. Last night, KBOI 2 News talked with a family who's pulling their daughter out of school because she would share bathrooms with the transgender student. Glenn Beebe talked with this transgender student about the family's decision. He joins us now live from South Junior High. Glenn?
Yeah, 13-year-old D.W. Trantham says it's hard enough being in junior high, but it's especially tough while being transgender. She finally won a long fight to get to choose which bathroom she could use, a move the district supports, but has outraged some parents.
It was really devastating to think that parents were so scared of me and that their lack of understanding led them to take their child out of school.
As someone who's transgender, D.W. Trantham says she's been through a lot, but she never thought her right to choose a bathroom would cause such an issue for others.
I have the right as a 13-year-old girl to use the bathroom just like anyone else.
D.W.'s father believes the complaints about transgenders using certain bathrooms is a red herring for those who are just uncomfortable or don't understand what it is. He says he understands other people's bias because he used to have it himself.
I was some of those people myself at one point in my life. You know, I didn't understand what transgender was or the issues involved.
Tim says something as simple as being able to use a bathroom of their choice is a large part of transgenders being accepted for who they are. The parents who pulled their student out of school cited safety of their child as a reason for concern, but DW says it's transgenders who are the ones at risk.
I mean, coming from a person that was sexually assaulted in bathrooms for being trans, I care about bathroom safety. I'm not in there, you know, to hurt anyone, and what's between my legs is not a symbol of who I am.
Tim says he hopes more parents will change their outlook about transgenders like he did, and is even willing to meet with them.
I would gladly meet them somewhere and they can meet DW, and if they can't look at DW and talk to DW and see that she is a girl and there is nothing to fear from her, I think it might change their minds a little bit.
The Boise School District says the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights has told all schools that they must, quote, provide access to the facility of transgendered students' choice. Now, DW says that she will continue to be an outspoken advocate for transgender rights, and she is currently pushing for the anti-bullying bill, which is being talked about in the legislature.
She's terrific. The idea that anyone would be against her or scared of her is outrageous.
And it's wonderful to see that kind of family support, that level of understanding of the issues.
Yeah, terrific.
We have a sad story from North Carolina. We told you about trans activist Blake Brockington, who was the homecoming king last year at East Mecklenburg High School. Well, he has committed suicide. He endured kind of a hateful backlash after that homecoming king thing. A lot of postings and things against and all that kind of stuff. So it's one of those instances where we do want to remind you that there is a hotline out there from the Trevor Project that you can call 24 hours a day in this country, or maybe from around the world. The number is 866-488-7386. That's the number.
Yeah, and the website, I believe, is thetrevorproject.org. Sad. And the second such suicide in Charlotte in recent days. In LA, dozens of people showed up to protest violence against trans people. 4 trans people have been killed in South Carolina in the last 9 or 10 months, and of course we've been reporting murders around the country this year, but people are speaking out and are protesting against it.
Also a positive story, a transgender activist in North Carolina, Janice Covington, was elected precinct chair in the Democratic Party. It's a first. During the Charlotte ordinance debate, where we lost, Janice used the women's room and was escorted out by a cop to applause by opponents.
And speaking of opponents, in Michigan, we've been following the story of the woman who's a member of Planet Fitness who got kicked out of her membership because she had complained relentlessly about a transgender woman using the locker room. The woman who was kicked out is going to sue. She complained that there was no written or posted notice of Planet Fitness's no judgments policy.
Well, she's being represented by a right-wing religious group.
And the trans woman who used the locker room went in there to store her coat and purse.
Yeah. Right.
That's what she did in the locker room.
Wow, that's $25,000 worth of pain and suffering, isn't it?
Yeah. At the Williams Institute at the UCLA Law School and the Fenway Health Center and Columbia University are going to launch a study of the transgender, transsexual population of the United States. They are taking the Gallup national survey of 350,000, recruiting a random sample of trans people from that. They expect to end up with 300 to 500 sample subjects, and they're going to try to define the population better in the United States and get some better information.
We do need that.
Yeah.
And we have a very good federal court ruling this week out of Minnesota, where a judge ruled that a trans man had a plausible case for discrimination at a hospital in Edina, which is near Minneapolis. He said his gender identity was ignored. He was traumatized. They handled him very roughly in the ER. It's the first ruling using the Affordable Care Act, which bans gender identity discrimination. And after all this, he got a bill that said your diagnosis was inconsistent with the patient's gender. Sue him. Thanks.
And we're so happy that Bob Jones III, the former president of Bob Jones University, has apologized for, in 1980, at a White House press conference, saying that gays should be stoned. His apology was, to some extent, the result of a petition signed by 2,000 people, members of BJ Unity, that complained about what he'd said.
Does he accept us now? Are we not going to hell?
I don't know that he went that far, but
I don't think he did.
He's apologizing for something he said 35 years ago.
Let the Lord take care of it later.
We'll see if the state of Oklahoma apologizes. They have told a straight doctor that he cannot have the license plate he wants for his car, and we think we have a local report on this. Let's see if we can make that work.
Maybe.
A license plate like this one would never grab your attention, but a local doctor is hoping that this one might. LGBT ally. He filed for this vanity plate with the state, but his request has been denied.
When I am driving around with a license plate that says LGBT ally, it shows to other people, look, I am here for my fellow Oklahomans.
Dr. John Patrick Keefe II wants that customized plate for the back of his Corolla.
It's time to speak up for them.
He's not gay. He's married with 2 children, but wants to show his support.
I have a lot of friends, and even my sister Kimberly is gay.
The State Tax Commission said no.
They turned that down, saying that it was sexual in nature, and I thought that was pretty unfair.
Keefe's hired an attorney to help him argue the term LGBT is now widely accepted.
Socially and politically, the landscape is different now, and people's attitudes are different.
Keefe hopes he can change even more minds.
Even if it just reaches one person, and that person feels better and happier and okay because they know that we support that, then the impact has been made.
And we reached out to the Oklahoma Tax Commission. They said that they cannot comment on this specific case, but we did ask, can the phrase LGBT ever be displayed on a license plate? They said that it is not on their list of banned words. In Southwest Oklahoma City, Kim Passot, KOCO, 5 News.
Good
of course,
for him.
Just because they say it isn't on the banned list doesn't mean they won't ban it if someone tries to use it.
All right.
But this is we're doing great straight men this week.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
We're making progress.
Yep. All right. Marriage news.
Well, Idaho, the House is calling on Congress of the United States to impeach judges who vote for same-sex marriages. And
now, same-sex marriage is now legal in Idaho, but even though the horse is out of the barn, they want to punish the judges.
We need to make a statement, they said. We just need to, because that's what God wants us to do. Well, a lot of those judges are Republican. The Eighth Circuit, which is Arkansas, Iowa, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, they are having their arguments on same-sex marriage before 3 Republican judges on May the 12th. And Freedom to Marry points out that 14 of the 19 Republican appointees who took cases on same-sex marriage have issued favorable rulings.
Absolutely, so don't give up. In Puerto Rico, the Solicitor General is asking the First Circuit to legalize marriage. The First Circuit is hearing the Puerto Rico case. All the states in the First Circuit legalized same-sex marriage without even going up to the federal courts, so there's no actual decision from the federal courts in the First Circuit, I think.
That's correct.
But in Puerto Rico, the local judges there ruled, or the federal judge there ruled against marriage rights. So now we're appealing that to the First Circuit. And the question was what the state of Puerto Rico was going to do. And they have decided that they are not going to oppose our right to marry.
And does that end the case? Because I don't think anybody else can intervene. Well, there are legislators who are suing the governor to get him to defend the ban.
Yes.
But if he doesn't...
Yes, they're trying to do that. I don't know.
Our side's already planning a mass wedding.
Well, the Solicitor General is on our side, but he's also asking the court to just put all this in abeyance until the Supreme Court goes through its decision on this June. We'll see what they decide to do in the First Circuit. And there's always been a question about what's going on in the U.S. territories, American Samoa, Guam, the Northern Marianas, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, each of which falls into different districts or parts of the circuits or whatever. And, are they covered? What are they doing? What's going on there? Well, it turns out that sometimes they are subject to the U.S. Constitution, and sometimes they are not. And this is because the Supreme Court, in previous decisions involving these territories, has said that the populations are too different from the U.S. states' populations, and they have made decisions that they are not subject to the same rules of the Constitution.
I learn a lot by watching this show about how America works and does not work.
Well, this strikes me as a racist analysis, but I haven't read all the decisions, so I can't tell you that for sure.
By the way, Utah enacted a law letting clerks out of performing same-sex marriages. A gay group there says that the worst parts of the bill were taken out, but I think it's a slippery slope.
In Arizona, the Supreme Court Judicial Ethics Advisory Committee says that judges cannot refuse to marry same-sex couples and only marry heterosexual couples because that would violate judicial conduct rules.
Now, what is going to happen to the group Freedom to Marry that Evan Wolfson runs once we win the Freedom to Marry and Evan says we're closing up shop?
After about a year to make sure that everything's going okay. We'll see. We'll see what Evan has in mind for his future. And in Alabama, there's been this discussion of the federal judge said probate judges have to marry same-sex couples, and Roy Moore and his state Supreme Court said, don't you do that. So then National Center for Lesbian Rights went back to the federal judge and said, all right, we're changing this into a class action suit. We want your order to cover all probate judges and all potential plaintiffs. And Judge Callie Grenade, who is the federal judge involved, said that she's fine with turning it into a class action suit, but she wants more briefing from both sides on how to proceed. But they're going ahead with that discussion.
Okay, international news.
Okay.
I think the most encouraging thing was that the United Nations this week voted against Russia's motion to end same-sex benefits for UN employees from countries that don't recognize same-sex relationships. It failed 43-80 to 37 in an administrative committee. I was disappointed to see India and China and Cambodia vote for it because I thought we were making progress there.
But Albania, the Bahamas, Belize, Cyprus, Haiti, Honduras, Latvia, Siberia, Malawi, Malta, Peru, Poland, Korea, Rwanda, Rwanda, Serbia, Sierra Leone, Sri Lanka, Ukraine, and Venezuela all voted on our side.
I'd call these the friends of Ban Ki-moon because he was being challenged administratively. His power was being challenged because he did that administratively.
Yes, but we did unite Iran and Iraq. They both voted against us.
And Saudi Arabia, our biggest ally.
Yeah, there's a dust up in Belfast, Northern Ireland. There's a bakery there that didn't want to do a cake with a pro-same-sex marriage slogan on it. Christians are up in arms. I would suggest that while in this country we say you can decide not to publish any material that does not agree with you. You can't refuse to make a wedding cake for a same-sex couple, but you can't. But you don't have to make a cake that has a slogan supporting same-sex marriage. But who knows what the laws are in Northern Ireland.
There was a protest in London against Dolce & Gabbana, a big one there that Peter Tatchell organized. We have a picture of them there. They seem incapable of making amends as much as they've tried, but they are getting support from the right-wing website LifeSite, which launched a petition supporting them. That's where you're getting your support from. And I don't think that, well, maybe they do buy your clothes.
Australia this week was having another debate on same-sex marriage in Parliament. There may be some results from that by the time you see this. The question was whether the ruling Liberal Party, which is actually not so liberal, was going to allow a free vote by their members.
And in the UK, 37% of Christians say that they're closeted about their support for gay relationships. In other words, they do support, but they won't say.
Join us.
Also in the United Kingdom, the Passport Office was urged to introduce a gender X on the passports for the non-gendered. Australia and New Zealand already have this, and Sweden has just added the gender-neutral pronoun hen to the words han for he and hun for she.
More acting up in Mexico and Veracruz. A couple of hundred people went out to march in support of a non-discrimination law in Mexico that would protect people on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. There is this big wave moving forward on marriage rights for same-sex couples. Now, like us, they want to move on to non-discrimination laws.
People are making a big deal that the Pope went to visit people in prison and some of them were gay. Duh. I mean, they don't get a choice whether to be in the meeting, you know? And I don't think he cares. I mean, he's also there with murderers and things like that. It's not like he's blessing all the sins as far as he's concerned. So I don't make much of that. People have been. He did this week accept the resignation of Cardinal Keith O'Brien, who gets to keep the title but not any of the functions. This is the guy who messed with a lot of men. He was the Archbishop of Scotland.
Jamaican activist Maurice Tomlinson, who's been quite out and active against anti-gay laws in Jamaica, has filed suit at the Caribbean Court of Justice. He's challenging the laws in Belize, which did vote for us in the UN, and Trinidad and Tobago that bar entry into those countries by homosexuals.
And they're saying, we don't enforce these laws. Do we really have to get rid of them?
Elton John needed a waiver to get into Trinidad and Tobago to perform in 2007.
I remember in the 1980s when gay people would come into the airport in New York, and if they was too effeminate and the guy didn't like them, he sent them back on the next plane, and we had demonstrations about it in the United States of America.
This is all in our lifetimes, folks.
In the United Kingdom, the first woman bishop is Libby Lane, and she refused to say whether she'd marry gay couples if the church lifted the ban. She said, I serve under obedience.
God. To coin a phrase. In Japan, legislators are working on plans to end anti-gay discrimination before the 2020 Tokyo Summer Olympics, because they saw what happened in Sochi and how there was a worldwide uprising, thank you, Queer Nation.
I was just going to say, thank you.
Complaining about Russia. Russia, by the way, says it doesn't discriminate against gay people. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, Putin says he's got gay friends.
Yeah, so Japan is trying to fix its stuff before the 2020 Summer Olympics. That would be great. Please continue.
In the run-up to the May 22nd referendum on same-sex marriage in Ireland, the Catholic Archbishop called some opponents obnoxious, insulting, and unchristian. he says his opposition to the referendum is Christian.
In Taipei, Taiwan, there was a big protest by LGBT activists. They're going to have this big united marriage ceremony, which is sort of symbolic. And they said, oh, we'll include same-sex couples, but separately. We have a little separate but equal action going on.
They don't like that.
And we said, no, thank you. We would like to be included really equally.
Costa Rica is moving to same-sex unions.
Yeah.
That's it.
Good.
That's the whole story.
All right. And in the Philippines, the trial has begun of U.S. Marine PFC Joseph Pemberton for his murder last year of the transgender woman Jennifer Laude.
And 2 cartoonists in Turkey were fined for implying that President Erdogan was gay. They showed a guy using a hand signal like this. If you want to insult the president, it's making a circle thing with your hand. They were first sentenced to 11 months in prison, but then they were just given a $2,700 fine.
In AIDS news, in Atlanta, Georgia, Grady Hospital, which is the big famous hospital there, has started universal testing of all patients in 2013 for HIV. Which the CDC recommended, by the way, in 2006 and is still not done in this country generally. But in 2013, Grady Hospital started doing it. They report that they get 2 to 3 new cases of HIV infection every day. And by the time they are diagnosed with HIV there at Grady, almost half of them have progressed to full-blown AIDS. And they say that 8% of the population in the area of the hospital is HIV positive. 8% in the neighborhood.
Well, I mean, you know.
That's a huge number.
There was a revival of something we knew, that the highest rates of syphilis in New York are in Chelsea, where we live. 6 times the citywide rate, and yet we're losing our big Department of Health clinic, and the nearest one's going to be, 100 blocks away.
Well, we're losing it. We're losing it for a couple of years while they renovate it. By the way, GMHC will do free testing for syphilis at their clinic on West 29th Street. And it's really important to be diagnosed because you catch it early, you can be cured with 1 shot of penicillin. You don't treat it, and you can do really serious damage to your health.
You'll be walking on the outsides of your feet.
And including possible death. So please get diagnosed on whether or not you have syphilis. And very important.
And take note of April 10th. It's National Youth HIV and AIDS Awareness Day. It's to raise consciousness about the impact of HIV, and young people are doing great things. The fact that young people are doing great things to combat it, go to amplifyyourvoice.org to learn more.
New British study says that daily use of Truvada as pre-exposure prophylaxis is virtually 100% protective. And even episodic use around experiences of anal intercourse or other risky behavior can be effective. Double dose before anal sex and up to 2 days after you've stopped doing that can be very, very effective. But we also want to show you, Larry Kramer was honored by GMHC this week with the first Larry Kramer, what's the full name of the award?
Larry Kramer. This is after throwing him off the board 20 years ago, or 30 years ago.
One of the co-founders, then too obstreperous. He wanted GMHC. He wanted GMHC to be an activist organization, and GMHC, everybody else wanted it to be a service organization, and so he got kicked out.
And be nice to the government and get government money.
Yeah. He got kicked out. He's been fighting with them ever since, but they've had several turnovers of administration, and they recently hired a guy named Kelsey Louie, who came from Harlem United to run the organization. And so they created this Larry Kramer Award, and they got Larry to accept it as the first recipient. And so they held the ceremony this week, and he gave a speech, and he talks You'll see he talks a lot about the need to concentrate on a cure, which is, of course, an excellent piece of information. There's more going on than he talks about in this speech, but we'll talk about that after we show you Larry Kramer at GMHC accepting the Larry Kramer Award.
34 years HIV/AIDS has been our plague for 34 years. We should have known more about this plague by now. 34 years is a very long time to let people die. I think more and more about evil. I believe in evil. I believe evil is an act, intentional or not, of inflicting undeserved harm on others. Genocide is such an act. I believe genocide is being inflicted upon gay people. Genocide is the deliberate and systematic extermination of a national, racial, political, or ethnic group, such as gay people, such as people of color. To date, around the world, an estimated 78 million people have become infected, 39 million of whom have died. When we first became acquainted with HIV, there were 41 cases. The main difference between the Larry Kramer who helped to start gay men's health crisis in his living room in 1982 and ACT UP in 1987, and the Larry Kramer who stands before you now, is that I no longer have any doubt that our government is content, via sins of omission or commission, to allow the extermination of my homosexual population to continue unabated. It is talk like this that got the original GMHC board to boot me off and out. It also was talk like this that enabled ACT UP to succeed in getting us our own treatments. These treatments are not good enough, but have been good enough to extend our lives. Unfortunately, they still come with side effects, and they reward their greedy manufacturers with more money than they would make locating the cure that would end this plague. GMHC was my first child, and its rejection was very painful. The original ACT UP self-destructed, which was also a painful experience. Once there were treatments, the desire to ACT UP managed to evaporate rather quickly. This greatest achievement ever facilitated by the gay population, we actually went out there and got our own medicines, then decamped now that we had a drug that would allow us to do what we did and live the lives that got us in trouble in the first place. The remnants of ACT UP, my second child, is a painful place for me to see now. 34 years is a long time for pharmaceutical manufacturers to operate in such an evil system. 34 years is a long time for every president and every Congress to sit back and let us die. "34 years is a long time for Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is in charge of A research, to watch his and our president and his and our Congress and their national institutes of health let us die."
Okay, so he hasn't let up. We will post this on our email.
Yeah,
so you
it's
can
a little
You can see the
longer.
whole thing, see Joe Mantello's spirited introduction of Larry.
Mark Ruffalo.
Both. Joe Mantello starts off.
Okay, and
Yeah.
then Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah.
But Larry's right. You know, all the focus is on prevention. There needs to be more focus on cure. There is a lot going on scientifically in the search for a cure, and we hear new little bits and pieces all the time. But we're not there yet, and we need to really prioritize it.
And Larry's got an 800-page novel that just came out.
And it's getting very well reviewed.
Called The American People.
Yeah. The only other piece of medical news, New York State has solidified its system that Medicaid will now cover gender reassignment and confirmation.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Okay.
Entertainment news.
Well, Looking has been canceled by HBO, although they're going to do one last special, apparently.
Special or film, not quite clear what that's going to be.
We were never high on the show. A lot of you liked it. It had low ratings. It got about 2 million overall in the course of the weeks that it was on, whereas a show like Girls before it got 4.6 million. So it was, you know.
I feel relieved at not having to watch it anymore.
Some of my friends thought it was very realistic about gay dating. I just didn't think the characters were ones that I wanted to follow.
So Jonathan Groff was the hero there, but meanwhile, as they were winding up looking this season, he was also on the last episode of Glee, marrying Leah Michele.
And I hear he's playing George III in the new hit Hamilton, the play about Alexander Hamilton, as an effeminate fop. George III.
There you go.
He only had 17 children.
Yeah. I want to recommend to those of you in Philadelphia, try to see Mighty Real, the show about Sylvester, coming to the Painted Bride Art Center next weekend, April 3rd through 5th. It's very entertaining. It's not, you know, deathless art, but it's a lot of fun. And The Bold and the Beautiful has turned a female character into a transgender female character. They've just suddenly redefined her as trans. And so that's interesting. And Kerry Washington, another thing you might want to take a look at, gave a speech at the GLAAD Awards in LA. She got the GLAAD Vanguard Award, and she talked very eloquently about the need for more roles and jobs for LGBT people.
And the linking of movements.
Yes, and the need